Hello, today we're going to do a quick lecture that's just going to cover the basics of manifest destiny as a concept and then talk about a couple of quick examples that we could use to illustrate the concept. So, manifest destiny was the 19th century belief that the United States was essentially destined by God to expand its territory from North America, all the way from the Atlantic to the Pacific. Supporters saw expansion as a way to spread democracy, Christianity, and quote unquote civilization. Critics would always see it as an excuse for aggression, the displacement of Native Americans, and eventually the war with Mexico. The actual term manifest destiny isn't coined until 1845, which is after some of the events that we'll actually talk about today, and was coined by a newspaper man by the name of John O'Sullivan, which proves the point of when your name isn't Irish enough, you can always just stick an O and an apostrophe in front of it. Now, the first example I want to talk about is the Oregon Trail. And no, I'm not talking about the video game from the 1980s. The Oregon Trail was a nearly 2,000-mile route stretching from Missouri all the way to the fertile Willamette Valley in present day Oregon, which is lovely if you've ever been. Tens of thousands of pioneers, which is quite a lot at the time, traveled by covered wagons seeking farmland and new opportunities. The trail was grueling. Travelers faced disease, accidents, and shortages of food and water. But despite the hardships, the migration fulfilled the manifest destiny of settling the West. And really, more than anything else, the Oregon Trail is an idea that if you don't have land in the East, where it was becoming less and less plentiful with the growing American population, there was still a little bit of a pressure valve release. You could still go west. It was hard, but you could make it. Why would you want to go? Well, gold's a good reason. In 1848, gold was discovered at Sutter's Mill in California, sparking a massive gold boom. When the news sparked the gold rush and rushed back east, hundreds of thousands of quote unquote 49ers, this is where the San Francisco 49ers get their name from, traveled all the way to California. They came from the United States, they came from Europe, some came from China. San Francisco, as a consequence, grew from a small town into a booming city. The rush brought economic growth, but it also brought lawlessness, racial conflict, and the rapid displacement of native peoples. California's population explosion that happened as a consequence of the gold rush actually led to its admission in 1850 as a state, which advanced America's expansionist vision. In the end, not very many people struck it rich from the gold rush, but the admission of California and the consequence of a massive population influx into the San Francisco Bay region would have profound consequences for the nation to come. Lastly, I want to talk about the Mormons. The Mormon Trek to Utah was one of the most significant migrations in American history and a vivid example of manifest destiny. Members of the Church of Latter day Saints of Jesus Christ, often called the Mormons, had faced repeated episodes of hostility and persecution in the eastern United States. Founded by Joseph Smith, you can see him on the left there in 1830, the church grew rapidly but also aroused suspicion and resentment for its distinct religious practices and tight-knit communities. As you may recall, the Mormons were polygamous, which means men were allowed to have more than one wives. Well, that didn't sit well with everybody as the Mormons traveled west. And Joseph Smith, the founder, was murdered by a mob in Illinois in 1844. At that point, the leadership of the church passed to Brigham Young, who decided that it wasn't exactly safe for the church to remain in the Midwest. And so in early 1846, under Brigham Young's leadership, thousands of Mormons began their exodus from Illinois. They set out in wagon trains across Iowa, enduring cold, hunger, and disease. Along the way, they built temporary settlements, the most notable being winter quarters in present day Nebraska, where they waited out the harsh winter of 1846-47. Then, in the spring of 1847, the first pioneer company, about 143 men, 3 women, and 2 children, set out under Brigham Young's direct command. They followed parts of the Oregon Trail, but often they blazed their own path, crossing the plains, the Platte River, and the Rocky Mountains. After arduous months of travel, the company reached Salt Lake City, Utah, in July 1847. According to tradition, when Young saw the valley, he declared, quote, "This is the right place," end quote, signaling that the long journey was over. The Salt Lake Valley was an arid desert region, but the Mormons quickly set about transforming it. They lay out Salt Lake City in a grid pattern and built elaborate irrigation systems to bring water from the mountain streams to their fields. Through cooperative labor and careful planning, they turned the valley into productive farmland. Within a few years, tens of thousands of Mormon migrants followed, creating a thriving community that became the heartbeat of the Utah Territory. The Mormon Trek demonstrated both the hardships and determination of westward expansion. While the Mormons were fleeing persecution, rather than seeking gold or farmland, their migration aligned with the ideals of manifest destiny, the belief that Americans were destined to settle and transform the West. By establishing a permanent settlement in the Great Basin, the Mormons extended the reach of the American settlement deep into the interior of the continent and created a distinctive society that remains influential still today.